And in the studio with me is Nicole Cherlet, who is running for council. Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning, Sean.
Well, thank you for coming in here this time, and with a different twist. Instead of Big Mountain Kitchen Life, we're going to talk a little bit about why you're putting your name into the political arena.
Indeed.
Now, you are the president of the Chamber of Commerce as of right now, so you've been involved and plugged in to the social sector and to some degree the political sector already. But why council now?
Well, first off, I'm not technically president of the Chamber of Commerce anymore. It's part of our bylaws that you cannot be president and run for council at the same time.
Oh, you stepped down now.
So I've stepped down. Tracy Buckley took my spot. But yes, I was at that table. I've learned so much. My eyes have been opened, we'll say, to the possibilities of how governance works, of how our communities work, and how citizens and business owners and all of us are supposed to be part of that conversation in a meaningful way.
So that's what you've learned over the last few years. So now you want to take this to a grander scale, we'll call that.
Yes, I want to get to the next table.
Now, you're not overly controversial, so I know that you don't have a laundry list of things that you think went, unquote, wrong.
No, actually.
So with that said, what are a few items that are in your mind that you see as, we'll call it a hiccup, an issue, a problem that you think needs to be addressed right away?
My biggest thing that needs to be addressed right now, I think the city council has been doing a really good job trying to fix some of the underlying processes and documents that guide our community moving forward. They've done quite a bit of work, especially in the relatively boring area of finances, but there is so much more to do, which all of the current city councilors are aware of. There's really only so many hours in the day. You have to pick one problem at a time. But what I think they could have done a better job of from the beginning, and that I would hope that we can get done right after the election, is to have a better look at measurements and reporting on key metrics. So things like the development permits is how many permits are in each stage? How long have those permits been in that stage? It's an aging report. It's not that complicated, but we have just recently started getting those numbers out of our city hall. And the metrics like that give you a good indication of our current situation. They help point out areas that need help before it becomes a crisis situation like what we're seeing now with affordable housing, the lack of housing as we get ready for what is supposed to be one of our biggest winter seasons yet, and we have nowhere to put staff.
Well, housing for staff has always been an issue and will continue to be an issue until some big businesses buy up land and build. But then, of course, you're running into the permit problem, like you just said. So in a round and round we go. Mm-hmm. And we could use another building planner, I believe, but we won't get into that one just yet. So those are a few ideas that you have. Now, what would you take from your experience at the chamber and connect it with the city? Because there have been times where you sort of feel like they're two separate camps altogether. Mm-hmm. So being that you've been on that seat, how would you feel that you'd be able to sort of have a better relationship between the city and chamber?
That's a great point. Sitting at the table of the Chamber of Commerce has been eye-opening for me to really learn different perspectives. I'm a retailer in the downtown core. Chamber has always had this image of being mostly about the retailers, where as a retailer, I was actually more interested in hearing what are the other industries saying? How can we support them better? Because the chamber is supposed to be for all members. It is what the members make of it. This is part of that democracy process where democracy is not a spectator sport. What happens is what we make happen. What happens is what we talk about and we bring up. And in order to have a good discussion, in order to come to good decisions and ways to move forward, it's critical that you talk to each of those different interest groups. Because at the end of the day, they don't really feel that differently. We all want a better community. We all want our community to run better, more efficiently, spend less of our dollars that we really just don't have. But one group cannot come up with all the answers. That's not how it works. The thing I liked best about working with Chamber was being able to rub brains with some of the other entrepreneurs and people in this community. There are so many smart people that are doing incredible work on their own on their own time. It's all volunteer stuff that's going on. But because we have so many diverse views working at it, we get much better results and we can come up with innovative ideas. I think that's something we can bring to the city, is that it's not just about one user group. It's about all the user groups, and having community consultation on a level that all of those groups do feel heard, and that the city can then incorporate ideas from all those different user groups, rather than focusing on just the ideas that can be coming up internally.
Now, a smart person once told me, a smart person knows what they don't know. So moving into this, what would you say that makes you the most excited but nervous because you don't know it?
Everything. It's interesting because, yes, over the last year or so, I've really been learning a lot more about governance, and it's opened my eyes to how much I don't know. I thought I had a good understanding of all the different hot topics. Having been on the chamber board for several years, we do stay in the loop of a lot of these different working committees in the community. So I have had a basic working understanding of what's going on, but now that I've put my name in the hat for council, I'm having to dig deeper, and I'm reading more of these documents. And it opens your eyes to just how much goes on behind the scenes. And it's going to be a lot of reading. It's going to be a lot of research. But that's something I've always been good at. It's something that always gets me up early in the morning to do some reading. So I'm looking forward to that.
If you were to land a seat, you will be assigned a department and area to work on. What one do you think would suit you, your personality, your experience, and what you know best? That's you didn't think I was going to come up with that question.
No, that one caught me off guard a little bit.
You're welcome.
Well,
check mark.
I've already been talking to my two boards that I'm on right now. I have been president of the Chamber of Commerce. We've already talked about me being interested in being the council rep to help maintain and build that relationship between the business community and City Hall. Again, we're all working for the same goal here. The other role I have that I am still president of is the local food initiative. And I think food security is something that our whole world is paying attention to right now, and that Revelstoke is particularly vulnerable to, because we are in a small valley. Our original agricultural land was flooded by the dams, and we're still learning how to build our own capacity again. So getting involved with the food security movement, I've sat at the working group for that recently, but also affordability. I own a business, so I get the perspective from a business owner's viewpoint, but I've also come from hospitality. I've worked for low-wage jobs most of my life. So I understand what it means to be in the rental market in this town and to try and make ends meet. We've almost left every off-season because we can't afford to stay. But then something always happens and we fall in love again and we stay for another season. We make it work. And since I've bought the business, that's given me some roots and some understandings of how the community really shifts together. It's fantastic.
Now, Nicole, I wanted to talk to you about ALR. You wanted to discuss, or you had mentioned previously that you have a passion and a care for the local food initiative. Mm-hmm. Now, one of those issues is land and being able to farm. And an argument that could be made is much of the land has not been utilized in, we'll call it 50 years. Mm-hmm. However, there is the other side of the coin, which people have a legitimate concern, which is once you change land, mm-hmm. it's done forever. And by the time Jack is a grandfather, well, I'll be very, very old, but we don't know if our grandkids are going to need to be farming in that land. We have no idea how to tell what the future holds.
Totally.
But once we give it away, it's gone forever. Mm-hmm. So with that, what is your thought over the last year about the disputes that have been going on and how you feel about that particular land? I know it's sort of a hot question, but
that's what we're here for, right?
Right.
So the ALR land has been an interesting conversation to follow. So yes, as part of the local food initiative, it has been a topic that we've discussed. The local food initiative did not take a stance on the ALR land because our mandate is to celebrate and support local food production. Food security, on the other hand, is a bigger question. So there's that local food production. There's the creating of meals from those ingredients. Then there's dealing with the organic waste, which is kind of a side topic. With ALR land and having that land in the reserve, I think it is important to have that capacity for the future. But one of the big conversations that's come up is that realistically, if we're going to increase our food production, we need to look at how is that going to happen. Our best farmlands were flooded by the dam. The farmlands that are left are, for the most part, relatively marginal, partly because of the tightness of the valley, the sun aspects, and just the realities of farming nowadays. The value of the land makes it not economically viable to farm. So how do we solve that problem? So there's ways of looking. Right now, there's talks in the works of a community farm that's going to be using hydroponic methods, potentially, in order to increase year-round production, not just in our short growing season, but year-round, because that's going to have a bigger impact on our food security. What was the other bit I was going to talk about? But the other thing, too, is just keeping those lands in reserve, I think, are important. But we need to really consider what is the purpose of it, rather than getting caught up in who did what or where things are. If we're going to maintain that capacity to grow in the future, which I think is important, then we need to have a more holistic view of what that means, rather than on particular properties, just that whole overall percentage, or if there's other ways to do it. If we can keep looking at development and the technological improvements in farming, to look at vertical growing, to look at hydroponic growing that has lights so that we can go year round. With climate change, there's a lot of factors to stay on top of, and our food security committee has been doing some fantastic all around work on that topic.
Now, as we've been having this conversation, you've always been very good at being non-controversial, while others have been very double toil and trouble. Where do you feel that your qualities will benefit by being on council? Is it being that you always find a way to listen to both sides? What is it that you feel that you are excel in and what you're strong in? On a personal note.
Yeah, I do have a hard time taking a hard line on most topics. I find the hard line is one extreme or the other, and in reality, most of our solutions are somewhere down the middle. As soon as you take a hard line and you end up closing off your mind to other possibilities. And it's really important to listen to those possibilities, to listen to the perspectives of other viewpoints so that you can learn and maybe find a win-win situation. Because if we're arguing about a symptom, but underneath that symptom is a problem we can all agree on, then there's more chance to be able to find a solution that is a good compromise that suits each group and gives everybody a bit of a win and doesn't compromise on something that was a deal breaker for them.
Do you think that at times small communities can be addicted to the negativity and for gossip purposes because it's something to talk about?
I think all communities are addicted to the negatives right now. It's watching the social media space and the digital transformation of our world. Again, this is not just Revelstoke. We see it all around the world. It's really easy to click on the negative stuff. It's not so easy to click on positive things or constructive things, right? With media right now, and social media particularly, the speakers, the customers, the citizens are the product. We're not the customer, right? Facebook and Twitter and all the social media platforms and media is based on getting clicks for advertisers because the advertisers are the customer. Rather than adding value to our community, they talk a good game, but it's not about adding value to the community. It's about adding value for advertisers and shareholders. And it's up to us as citizens, as people in that conversation to recognize that and say, hey, you know what? That is a very one-sided view of that, and that's my neighbor. I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's maybe ask them where they're coming from rather than jumping down their throat and assuming their motivations. In the schoolroom, in the schoolyard, there's teachers around to stop that. This feels like the schoolyard, but there's no teachers around. It's up to us to stop each other and to hold each other to account and keep it more on the positive.
So with that said, Nicole, is there anything that I haven't asked that you felt was very important that you knew you wanted to say and touch base on your way here before we wrap it up about you and your campaign? About
me and my campaign. Well, I wanted to talk about food
you.
Security.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the Chamber of Commerce and the strength of our local independent businesses, how that is the lifeblood of this town. They need to have the support of the rest of the community, and we need to be able to work together. So it's not us versus them. And I think we addressed that pretty good. The other us versus them that seems to be coming out quite a bit is council versus staff, or the city versus the city staff, the city's residents versus the city staff.
Yeah.
And it really makes me sad when I see assumptions about motivations and assumptions about skills where it's really easy to point blame at stuff. It's a lot harder to take a good, honest look at the problems and recognize where we all have a role to play in the solutions. Where everyone involved in this, in their heart, they are trying to do what's best for our community. That's the assumption I'm making. I might disagree with how you're doing it. I might disagree with your goal of where you think that's going to go. We all have a different view of what makes for a fantastic community. But in our hearts, that is what we're trying to do. It is in the best interests of that.
Are you ready for tomorrow?
I hope so. I think tomorrow's going to be fun. One of my things that I'm trying to do is make sure that my statements and my thoughts on each of the key topics that we've been discussing is up on my website with clear explanations of what I feel we can be doing together. So then that way, as we go into things, I can highlight some of my key points, but then direct people to my website if they want to learn anything more about me.
So with that being said, how can people get a hold of you? What's the website?
My website is hosted out of my store's website. I didn't feel that I had the time to build anything separate, so we're rolling it all together. And everyone should have a look at my store because that is an extension of me. So bigmountain.kitchen/Nicole.
Well, that was simple enough.
Yes.
Well, Nicole, thank you for coming in and sharing your views on your experience on Chamber and why you would like to have a seat at the council table come October 20th.
Yes, please vote.